So right before the new year, this really urgent petition started landing in inboxes all across the country. We're talking officials, academics, lawyers, you name it. And what it laid out was this incredibly complex and frankly desperate story about one man's fight for his home, his career, and what he calls fundamental justice.
And I want you to just listen to the opening line. This is from the petition itself, written by Professor Dr. Mohamed Fayad. It just hits you, right? This isn't some dry legal document. It's a gut punch. It's a plea against what he sees as a total, systematic assault on his rights.
And here's why it was so urgent. The petition went out on December 20th. The eviction was scheduled for 7 in the morning on December 29th. That is a 9-day window. Just 9 days, right smack in the middle of the holidays, to stop him from losing his home. The clock was absolutely ticking.
So, who is the person at the heart of all this? Well, according to his own letter, Professor Fayad is an elderly scholar, a U.S. citizen, and, this is key, he's acting as his own lawyer. The legal term is pro per, and you have to keep that in mind, because it's completely central to the accusations he's about to make.
Okay, so the first part of his argument really zeroes in on the legal process itself. He's basically claiming that the tools of the law were being turned against him as a weapon.
He actually has a term for it: procedural weaponization. He alleges that with this eviction hanging over his head, the other side's lawyers just buried him in complicated legal demands and gave him only 5 days to respond, right during Christmas week. You can imagine how impossible that would be.
And he gives this strategy a name too: procedural exhaustion. He argues that this wasn't really about finding facts for the case. No, he says it was a tactic designed to completely overwhelm someone representing themselves, to basically deny them a fair shot at due process.
You know, this all begs a pretty big question, right? One that the professor actually brings up himself in his letter. How on earth does a tenured scholar end up on the brink of eviction? Well, the answer he gives goes way deeper than just a landlord dispute.
And that brings us to the second, much deeper layer of his story. He argues that his housing crisis isn't some random, isolated problem. He says it's the direct result of what he calls academic robbery. For him, there's a straight line connecting these two events. He says his financial problems, the ones that led to this eviction, all started when his tenure was terminated at San Jose State University. This, in his mind, is the first domino that knocked everything else over.
And this slide, this really captures the insane contrast he's trying to paint. On one hand, he's claiming that these huge, multi-billion-dollar publishers are making money off his life's work, his intellectual property. And on the other hand, he's about to lose the roof over his head. He even brings up a legal idea called equitable estoppel, which basically is his way of saying, hey, how can it possibly be fair for the state to let me be evicted when, from my perspective, my other major assets are being exploited? So his claims go beyond just the landlord and the university. Professor Fayad directs his most serious accusations at the legal system itself. I mean, he is basically putting the Santa Clara County Superior Court on trial in this letter. And he lays out 4 specific, and I mean very serious charges. He claims his case file was forged, that he was denied access to it, that he was treated horribly, even humiliated, by court staff. And then there's the last one, which is a big one. He says there was no trial with an actual judge, only with a commissioner. Now, commissioners can handle certain cases, that's true, but they aren't appointed judges, and he's arguing that his case deserved the authority of a full judge. That's a point he really hammers home.
All right, so after laying out this whole case against his landlord, his old university, and the court system, what does he actually want? Well, the letter doesn't just complain, it ends with a very clear set of demands. It's a call to action.
He lists 5 emergency demands. First off, stop the eviction immediately. Second, he wants a full investigation into what he calls the lawyer's predatory tactics. Third, he's asking for protection for all his academic research and his personal belongings. Fourth, he demands a brand new trial, this time with a judge. And finally, he's asking for new housing and for all the relocation costs to be covered.
And you have to understand, he didn't just send this out into the void and hope for the best. No, this petition went to the highest levels of state government, it went to dozens of academics at his former university, to tons of legal firms, and even to corporate CEOs. This was a massive, calculated effort to make sure somebody, somewhere, would hear him.
And this is the line he closes with. It's so powerful. He frames this whole thing as a test of his rights as an American citizen. He's not just citing laws here. He's appealing to what he sees as the fundamental promise of this country: protection against the tyranny of the powerful. So, as we wrap up this dive into Professor Fayad's petition, it kind of leaves us with this big, lingering question. When one person's fight for their home pulls in landlords, lawyers, a major university, and the court system all at once, what does that ask us about the very systems we all depend on for protection?